Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek Program at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the Education Assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are on the south side of the Great Lawn by our mixed border because, just look at that trident maple behind us. That's Acer Bergeriana Michael Steinhardt. It is a hot plant. It is 2025. We got a program for you today where we're doing hot plants for 2025. We've got our Director of Horticulture, Greg Paige, over here, as well as our Research Technician, Tim Alderton, as well as a whole bunch of beautiful plants that we are excited to share with you today. So it should be a wonderful program. So those of you joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I will pass things over to Greg and Tim to show us the hot plans for 2025.
We are ready.
Yeah, I think so.
What did you do at work today? We talked about hot plants. What a horrible thing to have to do at a day of work. We always kind of have mixed feelings when we start these things. We rush to get ready, but when we actually sit down and do them, it's a lot of fun to go through these things. We decided to do this because we're kind of in that mode where we did a little bit of planting last week. The garden's kind of coming to life. We're ordering stuff for the plant sale. We're thinking about rejuvenating gardens. So we've got hot plants on the brain. So we thought we would share some things that kind of caught our eye, things that we're excited about. And we picked kind of a ragtag mixture of...
Some are consistent with us.
Right.
Maples.
Right. Maples, Redbuds. We've got some great perennials. We've got some NC State introductions. We checked all the boxes when we pick things, mostly unintentionally. We literally, the sprinklers were running down in the nursery, and Tim was dodging in between, plucking things out, and made our list, checked it twice, and here we are. So we've got things alphabetized.
I don't.
Sort of, kind of.
On the list we do.
On the list we do, but we can go in any direction.
I focused a lot on the herbaceous stuff, but I can
jump in
anything. But
you get started.
So for me, I've been taking care of the perennial border, and I'm always looking for some new things, and in the rose garden as well, things I can pop in for some color that are newer, or things that are sometimes underused.
Yep.
Things you wouldn't. I mean, they get bad raps, but really shouldn't. And some different forms of things. And in front of me, actually, let's go to the one that gets a bad rap. And we can't understand this one. This is an iris, and it's a sudata, which we don't have this in the flower yet, but we have the label. But this is a sudata, which a sudata is a cross between a Japanese water iris, which are Iris insata, and Iris pseudochorus. Iris pseudochorus is a bit of a thug. And it will actually naturalize. It will self-sow everywhere, but it will grow just about everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in wet areas, it's called yellow water iris, though it doesn't have to be in a wet spot at all. And then the insatas, which are problematic in that they must have some moisture to be happy, and they get these enormous flowers. But they've been able to get crosses between the two of them, and the crosses are so easy to grow. They can grow in just your average garden soil. They tend to, the foliage looks nice pretty much all season long through the growing season. They flower later than the yellow water iris, the Iris pseudacarus. And this one here in particular, this is, let's see if I can spit out its Japanese name. Shiryukyo, that's its SHIRYUAYO, or the Americanized name is Purple Dragons Valley, but in this case. But there's a whole series of Sudata iris available now. Some of them get quite large. This one here supposedly can get up to over 4 feet, 4.5 feet tall. And so it can be big. But they extend the season. They tend to be later than the Sudata or the pseudochorus. A little earlier probably, or the main season Japanese iris, which tend to be late flowering for us. But again, the Japanese iris are finicky. These are not finicky at all. And because the cross is fairly distant, they're sterile. So you don't have to worry about babies coming up everywhere. They only propagate by division. And you get this really nice plant that's vigorous, drought tolerant, makes a statement in the landscape when it's not in flower. And then you get flowers on top of 3.5 to 4 foot, even 4.5 foot stalks when they do come into flower. So they're underused, and this is one we happen to have this year. So we have a couple in the garden already, and I've been trying to add a few as we get the opportunity to do it. But if you can get a hold of any of the Sudatas, I highly recommend them.
And you mentioned it too. To me, the plants have to earn their keep in the landscape, and I think iris foliage is always underutilized and underappreciated.
I mean, some of our bearded iris tend to look like
yes.
not so pretty when they're
yes.
flowering. Even the native Louisiana type iris,
right.
if you have them in a wet spot, they'll stay evergreen. But
yes.
in the summer, if you have them in general soil, they just tend to die down to nothing.
Right.
Look like nothing.
Right.
These will hold up their foliage the whole season.
And I like that aspect of them. You get a good flower, but you get that extended.
It almost gives you the appearance of an ornamental grass.
Yes. Exactly. Very, very good one.
Some of the other stuff I have in here, I have a couple different salvias. And for years, I've kind of poo-pooed some of the salvias because moving down here from Western Pennsylvania, there were so many that we grow. And the types that I didn't like were some of the European salvias, but they're starting to grow on me again. And this is a Salvia pretensis selection called Moulin Rouge. And I'm really liking this year. And I'm going to put some of these probably in the perennial border. But large flowers, this one can get up to, I think it was 28 inches. I have to look at my cheat sheet.
That sounds about right.
I didn't put it there. 2.5 feet. So yeah, wide and about 2 feet tall, a little taller than 2 feet actually tall. So it's pretty good sized when they're mature. You can deadhead these. They will recurrently flower throughout the season. Another hybrid that we've been growing in the garden with pretensis and numerosa is one that I also like. And actually, there's some back in here near that. The Sorceress racemosa is one called Blue Bayou. Mm-hmm. And that changed my mind about these pretensis hybrids in comparison to the numerosas, which tend to look good first thing in this spring right now and through May, or maybe mid-May, and then they kind of just sit there through the summer and don't do too much, sometimes fizzle out. But these pretensis selections and hybrids have been excellent as far as I'm concerned.
Big honking flower.
Yeah, and this is considered one of the deepest flowered ones of pink shade. So that's a new one. I wanted to try it. So that's one that's out there. So then the other ones I've been adoring since I moved down here now 20 years ago are the Greggii and Microphylas. And this is a Greggii here that it's a bit more compact. We've actually been growing. This is from a series from Ball Horticulture. The Mirage series is the trade name part of it. And this is Mirage Blue. But its real name is wonderful, I will tell you. It's VALMIRLEU, however you want to say that. But anyways, there's one Greggii I've really liked for the years that we have in the garden. It's called Diane. It's a little bit more in the pink purple instead of the blue purple shade, but it was always my favorite for its intensity of color. It tends to be much more relaxed than this. So Ball has been working at making these nice compact selections. This gets to about I think it's 2.5 feet tall and wide, or 16 inches tall and 2 feet wide. So it's a little more compact, so easier to use in the landscape. And if you know anything about Greggii salvia, they're commonly called autumn sages, which I find so funny here. They don't start flowering until, March, the end of March, early April, fall.
Not the fall. Not the fall.
And then they will go strong probably until mid to late June. And then when it gets hot, they'll slow down a bit. They'll take a summer vacation. When you want to go to the mountains or to the beach, they'll take a short vacation themselves pretty often if we get real hot. But if it stays evenly moist and moderate temperatures like we rarely get in the summer, but do occasionally, they will continue flowering. And then they perk back up even more again in the late summer. So late September, October until frost, you'll get good flowering on them again. So there's a whole series of these mirages, and this we've been growing one called Rose Bicolor for several years, and this year we're trying this blue. And I've already thrown a few of these into the rose garden to intermingle with them and give us some contrast in color. And I'm looking forward to that. So any of these Greggii, give them a try. They'll take it hot too. So you think about it that way. But
it has a very iridescent kind of cast to it.
This one is
light.
Great.
Yep.
But I've made the list of some of the other colors. There's white, burgundy, cherry red, deep purple, hot pink, rose bicolor, like I said, salmon, and violet. So there's a wide variety that you can get. But try some of those, especially if a hot, sunny area. They are great. I can grow these out on our roof garden with no problem. I grow them in our xeric garden. I can grow these in our open beds. They don't want to be in a wet spot.
No.
Don't put them with the water iris.
And they don't need a lot of irrigation.
And they really don't need any irrigation aside from just to establish them. So that's another great thing for us with our seasons getting hotter and drier. Great plant for us. And our warmer, like I said, it flowers most strong on the bridge seasons of spring and early to midsummer, and then late summer into fall. So you get a really long season with those. Some other things that are coming out with so many more and I'd say probably the old-fashioned plants are some of the carnations or pinks, as you would see. Those were so popular in the late 1800s and the first half of the 20th century, and they then fell out of favor. But they're starting to do breeding work with them again to get some of them back. And this is one we have this year, and this is cranberry cocktail, and is one of them. And they're making these carnations, and they're compact. They don't flop like some of the older ones. Wonderful evergreen foliage. It has great fragrance. I love carnations. And I'm shocked by some of our students working with us that they didn't know what carnations were.
It's too old fashioned.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of old fashioned, every boutonniere had that, and every guy gave that to a girl when I was in school. They'd sell carnations, but these are great for the landscape. They only get about 8 to 10 inches tall, so they're not, like I said, going to flop. But you get these. You can cut them and put them in a small bouquet. But if you deadhead these after they do their first flush, these repeat flower. So there's a whole series of them coming out again, becoming much more widely available. And even when they're not in flower, you have this great evergreen blue foliage. So something to try again in your landscape if you've kind of forgotten about those from different times in your life, or do something new if you're from that what's the generation that is now?
I can't keep up,
honestly.
Anyways, might not recognize these, but that's introduce something new to them that's bringing back the old and reminiscing for us earlier generations. And the last one I have is right here is this peony. We got a selection of new peonies in this year. These are Itoh. So the Itohs are really cool. And the original guy was able to cross these. These are complex hybrids between tree peonies, which are Peonia lutea and Saffruticosa. And then they figured out how to cross them with our herbaceous peonies. So tree peonies tend to be, the flowers are really short-lived. They aren't as hardy at plants.
They're not real pretty to look at when they're not flower either.
They tend to be open and gangly, but they are shrubby. They're true shrubs, and they've been able to cross them with the herbaceous peonies, like that everyone has. But they have a longer flowering period,
faster growing.
They're not as heat tolerant,
right?
So you get some of the heat tolerance from the tree peonies, and the longevity of the flowering from the herbaceous peonies, and the good foliage, not the structure, but the good foliage from the tree peonies, which tend to have a more refined look, and some really cool colors that you don't get in herbaceous peonies, like yellows and purples.
The try.
And in this case, we're getting this one here. This is one, it's Smith Opus 14, or the trade name is Hot Tamale. And this one in particular has streaking in it. It's really cool. It has salmon colored, I'd say, base. And then you have streaks of hot pink and cream in there.
White and purple on the back.
It's really cool. But there's a bunch of Itohs that have become available. Like Barcella has been the most popular, and I said yellow. That is the ultimate yellow peony available nowadays. But this is continuing on some of that breeding. This is from a guy, Don Smith, and I didn't look where he's at. I can't remember. But anyways, he is a retired. I have to look his title. He was a retired atmospheric research physicist of all people. He decided he wanted to breed peonies. They in the write up they were doing on him, they compared him to Willy Wonka and wanting to make the perfect candy. He wants to make the perfect peonies.
He did a good job.
He's been doing it. There's a whole series of these Smith Opus, and there's some others that don't have the Smith Opus as their real name, but he's got a whole series of different colors, and the trade series name it has candy in it. We got some extras, thank goodness, and I get to try them in the garden. But the foliage on these Itohs is excellent when they're done flowering, and it holds the whole season. They have a little bit of wood to them, like a tree peony, but it's just like 4 to 6 inches tall, so they don't get gangly and open and flop like them. But you get, like I said, you get these spectacular colors. And the other cool thing, apparently, they've learned to tissue culture these. So tree peonies have been issues with propagating them for the longest time. They have had the only way of doing them is to graft them. So it makes them fairly expensive. And these are still fairly expensive at this point, but they're becoming available and less expensive by the day, except for maybe the tariffs. But anyways, these are from the United States. We don't need to worry. They're much more readily available. They're easy to reproduce. So I expect these to become more widely out there in the next couple of years. And so these are, as far as I'm concerned, hot, as in hot tamales.
More people are starting to carry these.
Yes.
More of the nurseries that we order things from, because of all the things you've said. You don't have to graft them, and compared to a tree peony, they grow much faster, and you get a flower a lot sooner. First time I got a Bartonzilla, it was probably half the size, and it had a gigantic flower on it. So they produce flowers relatively quickly.
I don't know. This is the first flower on this one that we had in the nursery. I expect whenever the plant matures, you're going to get a 6-inch inflorescence or flower on there instead of the 4 that it is right now.
We hope.
Either way, that color is so cool. So those are my top herbaceous ticks right now. But I mean, we have some that we might share in here.
Yeah, let's do some woody things.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites.
So I'll give it to you.
Nice space.
I don't know if you know it or not, but we grow a lot of Japanese maples here. We talk about them on every tour that we do, and it's hard not to become enamored with them. Acer palmatums, Acer japonicums, respectively. There's over 200 different cultivars of each. It's probably more.
There's more like 3,000 plus named selections.
Named selections of each of those. And it probably went up a couple hundred while we were talking.
Yes, they've been selected.
So you really have to, we're very picky about what we choose. And this was one that when we saw it in availability, we snatched it up. This is Acer palmatum Golden Falls.
We planted one in our new berms last summer.
Yes.
And it's been growing like
crazy. It's just a beacon of color all year long. The new growth is a little more pinkish and turns to this yellow. Tim mentioned earlier, I think, that you see these in the shade and they do well. But one of the berms is in full sun, hot all year long. It did not burn at all. I mean, this is a heat tolerant one, similar to Ryusin, but
it's a seedling of Ryusin.
It's a seedling and it weeps. This one, I've been told you need to keep a stake on it a little bit longer, otherwise it'll just flop a little bit.
You could also grow it as a ground cover.
Yes,
true ground cover.
It'll just stay wherever you stop staking it. It'll just continue to weep and kind of mound over itself. I have seen these in gardens in Japan and other places where they're literally just creeping along the ground. Maybe this cultivar, maybe some other ones. But this was one that we're absolutely taken with right now, and I'm glad that we have it in the garden here. But we wanted to share it with you. Another theme of things that we decided to pick from were things that you could actually find.
Yes.
We like to promote the weird and the wonderful, but we also like to promote the wonderful and weird that you can get. And there's a lot of places that you can shop and find these. Mr. Maple carries this one, but this is one that we're super excited about, and it's just absolutely glowing in a block on our sun pad as we speak. Anything else you want to say about him?
No, I think that's good.
And I'm going to jump right into in the same theme of interesting things, and we'll come back to some Japanese maples.
Intermingle down.
Yeah. This is Disanthus hircidifolius and a nishiki. This is a plant that I had when I worked at the Biltmore Estate, and it did very well there in the mountains. I think it likes the cooler nighttime temperatures, although it's native to Japan and China, where I've seen it growing there where it wasn't so cool at night. I think it comes down to moist, well-drained soil and a little bit of reprieve from the sun in the heat of the day. This one has this nice edged leaf that's kind of creams and whites all at the same time. It's in the Hamamelaceae, the witch hazel family. So in late fall, it gets that weird witch hazel flower on it. I think this is kind of that chartreusey pink, if I'm not mistaken.
It has pink. I don't remember if it's chartreuse or not. But
yeah.
I remember seeing, because we actually have this in the lab house. And it has flowers.
Not chartreusey. It's that nice kind of almost loropetalum kind of flower. Long racemes.
Like a witch hazel.
Like a witch hazel, which it's related to. The other thing that's really nice about this is the fall color on this is absolutely spectacular. Bright reds. You get pinks because of the variegated edges on this, deep burgundies. It's a really, really great fall color plant. This is something that you don't see a lot. It's not hard to find, but it's not easy to find. You don't see it in gardens that often. I see it in gardens in the Pacific Northwest. I've seen it all over Japan. And like I mentioned in Asheville, we had it at the Biltmore Estate. But got a few here, and it's something that I want to try more of. On some of the trips that I've gone to Japan, we've tried unsuccessfully to get these back because there's lots of cultivars and interesting ones there. But a really, really great plant, and that's one of my favorite families of plants. There's so many great things in it, and this is definitely one of them. Who's next?
Redbud, peach.
Let's do the peach because it's heavy.
Oh, yeah, I'll get it. So, you want to start?
You go.
Oh, this is one of Denny Werner's introductions. This is a cross between NCSU Dwarf Double Red peach, which we have here in the garden, and one called Bonfire. So NCSU Dwarf Double Red has this reddish pink flower, and it's quite large. It's bigger than a 50-cent. It's a silver dollar size flower. Yep. And they're done flowering already. And then crossed it with Bonfire, which has a single pink flower or pale pink flower, but dark foliage. And so you get this, he combined the dark foliage with the double pink or double red flowers, and you get this. This is Ruby Ruffles, I think is the trade name.
Ruby Ruffle, singular.
Ruffle. Its real name.
Just the one.
Yeah. Its real, did I put it on here? I don't know if I did. But its real name is NC something.
NC Peach-6.
Yes, exactly. Is it 2000 something -6?
Just NC Peach-6.
Yeah, that's what it is. He didn't have a year. It's Tom does years. But anyways, yeah, it's just a really cool thing. This is on a high graft here. We have one actually planted just right over here, which is about, it's been in the garden for, I'd say about 4 years now.
That one's gorgeous.
And it's about 4.5, 5 feet tall at this point. So
people always ask me, does it produce peaches? It wasn't bred for that, but I don't know if you can see them.
We do have peaches.
There's some right here. It's mostly, more pith and seed than actual flesh. It was not bred for the fruit. It was bred for the foliage and that really pretty bright flower. I like the lower grafts better. But it's such a, it's a good patio peach.
Yes.
If you've got a pot, you don't have a lot of space in your garden, this is a great one to add that does very well in a container. It can take the heat, fairly disease tolerant, but you're not going to get bushels and bushels of peaches to make jams and jellies and pies and all the wonderful things that peaches can do for you. It's an ornamental plant.
But then he knows how to do peaches too, as well as the Redbuds. He was doing peaches long before he did Redbuds. So that was his thing. And Buddleia, before he did Buddleia
and liquid ambar and other things.
He did peaches. And
I'm going to go back to you.
Sure.
Running out of space.
I have the space over here because you stole everything else.
I did. I took it all.
Yeah.
All right. This next one, I want to put it so you can see the fuzzy stems, and I need to get my notes out. This is a climbing hydrangea vine that's from Mexico and
south to Peru, I think,
and all the way south to Peru. The first place I ever saw this was at Heronswood Nursery, I think. This is Hydrangea seemanni. It's an evergreen climbing hydrangea. So you get these nice, thick, glossy green leaves. The new growth is a little bit paler, but it'll get really kind of thick, almost fleshy, and get a nice dark green, shiny color to it. Underside of the leaf is a little bit silvery, so you get a kind of a different dimension there. I love the color, this kind of a cinnamon tomentose stems of it.
They're hairy.
Yes, they're hairy, and it wants to go up. This is a great vine if you've got a yard with pine trees that just have those nice naked stems on them. This is something that's good, kind of going up a big tree. And I don't know why more gardens don't do that. Dan has done that in his garden and at Heronswood, and I think it's a great use of them. It gets that nice whitish lace cap flower on it. It'll flower more in more sun. And more of a shade, you'll get that scramble, but it wants to go upwards. And again, it's another one of those things that does very well for us here. It's not terribly hard to propagate, but it's something that you don't see very much. And one of the things that we want to do more of here is show ways to grow more vines. And this is one that I've always liked ever since I first saw it. And planted it in my garden in Charlotte on some pines to kind of just grow up and scramble. Literally planted them, walked away from it to take up that dynamic underutilized spot in the garden. But great plants for that part of the garden.
We've been growing it in the laugh house for years now. Since probably, I'm going to guess 2012 or 13. I put it in there.
Pretty hardy. It's made it through some decent winters. Yep.
At least.
And it's done fine. And I think that attributes to it grows at higher elevations in Mexico and down through Central and South America. But I really, really like this one. I love the vines.
Okay, let's look at this one here. This is another new weeping Japanese maple. And I forgot to there's the three main groups of Japanese maples. So the palmadas, the dissectums, and then there's is it Matsumare or something?
I think.
Group or something like that.
I think.
And this belongs to the Matsumare group. And I looked up, it's a seedling from one that I can't say. Nakukamado weeping. So anyways, but it's supposed to get pale pink to salmon new growth on it when it first emerged.
Fountain of Youth.
And it's called Fountain of Youth.
Something we don't know anything
very
about.
Vigorous. Because, oh my goodness, because I'd say, I don't know how, I'm guessing this is like a 1 to 2 year old grass.
Yeah.
Fast. Super fast growing. And again, you have to train this one up as high as you want it to go, and then it will go down. It's a relaxed grower. It's not quite like the dissectums, which tend to be they're weeping, but they're freestanding.
Mm-hmm.
These are kind of like Ryusin, or this Golden Falls, and will need some support. Or you can grow as a ground cover, probably.
Yeah, I love the green stems on it. I'm not sure about the fall color.
I had to get a cheat on this one. Fiery red in fall, bright fiery red.
That sounds about right. But such a delicate plant. I love how that all kind of comes together, and that would be a great accent plant in any garden, big or small. It would do very well. Let's do the next one.
Yeah,
we're on a roll with Japanese maples here.
And this one, totally different group. And we've had this one in the garden for several years, but I've been reading about it, and I think I need to put another one in a shadier location. This is Acer japonicum oasami, and supposedly I was reading it gets enormous leaves when you grow it part shade. Ours isn't too much sun, and so the leaves stay smaller.
Some of them are big, but that
bigger.
makes sense.
And yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And I'd love to get one into a part shade area. But the japonicas in general, this has been a nice upright one. It's actually growing just straight over this direction here, between the mixed border and the rose garden. In reality, on the edge of both, and it's gotten about 10 feet tall or so, but love the leaves on the japonicum. So
these are sometimes called full moon maples. Acer japonicum aconitifolium is kind of in that, and it reminds me of it with that big fat leaf that's almost entire.
They're more sparingly foliaged, because it's bigger. Totally different look. But I really love the japonicas, and they're being underused in general. I didn't look to see the color of the fall foliage. I don't remember.
I don't either.
I'm going to
say orange.
Fall color, but yeah, a lot of them. That's right.
A lot of them are orange.
Orange at that time of the year. But that's a cool one to grow if you're a little bit different texture. And in that part shade, ideally the spot, but it will take sun as well. So another hot one to try.
I like the idea of putting this in the shade to see if we can get those big leaves.
I saw some in it's the Arboretum in Seattle.
Not the rhododendron species?
No, the Arboretum at the university.
Oh, Washington Park.
Yeah, Washington Park Arboretum.
Yes.
And they were that and Emmett's pumpkin and the leaves.
Yes. Yes. It's a great garden. One last Japanese maple. This is Acer palmatum pastel. And I don't know anything about this one. I did not look this one up.
It's from what's his name?
You shouldn't have asked. I
read it earlier. It's a seed he selected.
Buckholz Nursery is outside of Portland, Oregon. Very famous for bringing lots of interesting Japanese maples, among other things, into the world. They are part of Mr. Maple now.
Yeah.
And the propagator, I've met him several times. I saw him before I came here. I'll think of his name in a minute. We both got up super early this morning. Yeah. We're brain drained right now.
But we didn't even say anything. This is pastel. This is a palmatum called pastel, and it has reticulated variegation.
Yes.
That changes color as the season goes on. I didn't put that one on here on my cheat sheet. But I did read about it. And I like it because also the red stems against that reticulated variegation, and then the new growth having a pink coloration to it, that's where that pastel comes in. And it supposedly does hold the reticulation fairly well through the summer, if I remember correctly. Which some of them, like the Ghost series, tend to fade to a more solid color as the season goes on. It becomes a little less noticeable.
And these I've used in shade gardens because they stand out a little bit more with that kind of lighter color.
Yeah.
Fall color on these is reds and oranges and yellows kind of all at the same time. And that's set off really nicely against the red stems. But for me, these almost border on looking like they've been hit by lace bugs or something. Some people have asked me about that. Spider mites. They look like they've been hit by spider mites, but they haven't. But I think they really look nice in a more of a kind of a shady garden.
We have purple ghost out in the east, and I know last week when we were out in the berms, I look over, it was just spectacular against the other trees around it. And it has that same reticulated variegation, but it's more of a purple tone or a red tone. Than this. This is more of the green cream colorations.
We could do a whole show just on Japanese maples.
No, there's not that many.
I did a nice graph there too. All right, I'm going to talk about the Styrax because it's driving me crazy. I have to talk about it.
I'll put you back on that one.
This is the heavy one. Oh. So I may have said once or 20 times since I've been here that there's not a Styrax that I do not like. I think that's something that drew Mark and I together as when we met each other over the years. My good friend Matt Lobdell, who works at Missouri Botanic Garden, I think he did his thesis on Styrax. He's another one that's really lit the fire underneath me. This is an introduction from J. Frank Schmidt and Son Nursery. It's Styrax japonicus Nightfall, and this is a kind of upright growing weeping form. And it reminds me of one. There's one called Fragrant Fountain that's a favorite of mine. We've got one planted over by the Lath House. But I that was one of the first things I planted in my garden in Charlotte because I just love the way it kind of cascaded over itself. And this one does that same thing, only it has this really dark foliage. As it emerges and grows and fills out, that becomes darker.
Starts green, actually.
It starts green and starts to really color up to the really dark burgundy color. The flowers are starting to come. And all these japonicas set flowers at a relatively young age. Tons of flower buds on this little tree already. Those will open up to nice, pretty white buds and a really pretty white flower. This one is also fragrant, which is another thing that's positive about it. But the white flowers are really set off on that dark foliage. There's another burgundy one that I like a lot. The name just went out of my Evening Light.
Evening Light. It's actually behind us in a couple beds back.
More oval, but kind of the same kind of characteristics. This is a mounding true weeper that will grow up very hardy.
And we've been growing it actually in full sun, just over this direction beyond the trial beds, actually, for probably 3 or 4 years now. And
we would tend to get stuff early from them, but I'm seeing this more out at wholesale and retail growers. But it's definitely one that checks the multiple season of interest for me. After it's done flowering, goes through the growing season. Not a lot of fall color, yellows and just kind of dusty browns. But the winter interest on this is nice. It has nice silvery bark, really great structure with that mounding foliage that mounds all over it. So it checks a lot of boxes for me in terms of a really good landscape plant. Love the genus Styrax and that family of plants for that matter.
The Styrax AC is great. And actually some of the Styrax, I don't remember what cultivar it is. It's one over here. It's starting to come out already.
And this can't be our last one.
It is. Actually, we have this too. Okay, this is another one of Denny Werner's introductions. This is Cercis. I have to look at the name. This is where the number comes in. This is Cercis canadensis NZ 2014-5. Garden Gem Emerald. And he has some other garden gems coming out that I don't know if they're quite available yet, but they are compact ones, which is great. So these are for a smaller garden. They could be used as a container. They could or directly in the ground, no problem. So the one parent of this is probably Ace of Hearts, if I remember right.
That sounds about right.
Where he gets these tight, compact little leaves. And then I don't know what he crossed it with on the other side on this, but
we will never know.
If I'd asked Denny,
he would tell us.
But Denny has been doing so much work with Redbuds, and so he has other ones to look for. There's weeping ones, there's red-leafed ones coming out. So
more yellow.
And he's, I don't know if he's introduced to the U.S., but yes, he has a yellow one that I've been eyeing for years in his trial beds, and I've just been waiting on it. But so look for these garden gems, and if you can get them, and right now you can get emerald at least, but they're compact, like I said. So these are going to fit into the smaller and smaller gardens we're getting nowadays as our houses get closer and closer. And so they aren't the wide spreading like forest pansy,
right.
Redbuds that they'll get 30 feet, or not 30, maybe 20 feet wide, which is sometimes wider than you can use in a spot for a small tree.
And we've got a bigger one of these just out the back of the white garden, don't we?
This is in the right. South. No, this one's in South Halls.
Okay.
We had the weeping form of this.
That's what I'm thinking of.
So
that's what I'm
and then there's another weeper over here. One's red leaved and one's green leaved.
Yeah.
So yeah. So again, look for these garden gems, Redbuds, and you're going to find something that's really cool to fit into a little bit smaller spot. Or if you have a big property and you just even want to squeeze another layer in, these will work for that too.
It's a good garden plant. It's good as a companion for other things as well. You don't have to worry about it. It's dominating. It'll go in very well and sets flowers at an early stage. already bloomed. That's it, I think.
We
You want
have-
to talk
we
about
had,
our cover
We
plant?
had to bring a cover plant up. This was the one that Blake used as the cover plant for on the website. And this is Sarissa japonica
Apple blossom?
apple blossom. It's, I mean, this is just a tiny one. These are great little evergreen shrubs for us. They're underused and they flower off and on all summer, but late spring or actually mid-spring is when they're going to do their heaviest flowering, but then they'll continue. You can grow them as a houseplant if you want. They'll almost be perpetual flowering. Excuse me. And for Blake, it can be used for bonsai. So versatile little plants. They'll top out at about 3 feet tall. They will layer, and you can form a dense thicket if you let them in the landscape. And I have not had trouble with rabbits eating these. So they haven't touched any of my Sarissa over the years. So I doubt the deer will bother them either.
Today.
Once they're until they get established, though, if we have a hard winter, they can get a little bit of damage sometimes. But once they're established, they're great. The bees like them and butterflies like them, even when they're in flower, which is, like I said, most of the season. So you have that. But this one has a fairly deep pink.
A little variegated edge.
And yeah, there's a common name for them, and it has to deal with that white edge, and I'm blanking on it right now. But those sometimes call them snow roses as well. There's some double flowered forms, but if you can find any Sarissa japonicas, give them a try. They're a hot little plant, and they'll take a hot spot.
Yep.
When I first started working here, we were growing them in the shade. They grow in the shade, but I find that they will flower most heavily in a hot, exposed, sunny spot and be happy as a clam. So
you expect it to be something that needs a little bit of protection and nursing along, but it'll pretty
do far better in a sunny spot. So
a little bit of tough love goes a long way with them.
So that is our final.
All of them.
What was it? Hot picks?
Hot plants for 2025.
Hot plants. So
that's wonderful. We do have a handful of questions from people, though. Marilyn was asking about the Disanthus. She wants to know how little sun will the Disanthus need to get good fall color? And she's asking because she doesn't have very much sun at all.
I think she and I have had this discussion once already.
Okay.
But I'm going to clarify for everybody that forever is going to get to see this YouTube. To get the flowering, you need a little bit more sun. Dense shade, I don't think it's going to be the flowering's not going to be as good. I can't speak for the fall color. I'm not real sure. The fall color is very dependent on the chemicals that the plant produces, and that's mostly temperature related.
Yes.
Moisture availability and stress. I don't think it has much to do with light. So I really don't know the answer to that. Any place I've ever seen these growing, they get some protection from the full blasted sun. They understory, filtered, a couple hours of direct light a day. That's where I've seen them doing well in any place that I've ever seen.
A witch hazel.
Like you would think for a witch hazel. I think witch hazels are a little bit more forgiving. Yeah. They can take, I've planted them in full sun and they've done okay, but witch hazels do best in a little bit of understory.
And where you see them in the wild is typically on the
yes. So that's what I would say for that, but I can't really speak for the fall color in a really, really shady garden. Yeah. We need to come visit her garden to get a better sense of what she's needing. So there's an invitation I'm asking for right there.
Nice. We did a class with Bryce back in fall that was fantastic plants with fabulous fall color. Yeah. He explained the mechanisms for how fall color goes, and it's pretty complicated, but essentially you need bright sun and cool nights for the best fall color. So basically the more light you can get it, the better fall color it'll get. Yeah. You still might get some without sunlight, but sunlight's pretty necessary for the anthocyanins in the leaf to really brighten up after the leaf's already started to senesce. So,
and I think from an edge situation, because I'm thinking about plants like Fothergilla that are an edge plant,
actually,
right? And they have great fall color, but it's kind of in that edge scenario. Oak leaf hydrangeas. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Low light and then late in the season.
Yep.
Okay, let's keep talking about light because Gail wants to know if the Prunus persica NC6 Ruby Ruffle, if it has to have a lot of direct sun.
Ideally, I would think you're going to want as much sun as possible, especially for the flowering and for the longevity. Peaches tend to want good light.
Yep.
They're fairly early successional, I would suggest, or a lot of Prunus in general tends to be early successional in the wild. So you'll see them again in the wild. I'm guessing they'd probably be on forest edges, but we grow them in orchards if you think about it, not and to get best fruiting. But I would assume to get best flowering and foliage color, especially being this is a burgundy leaf one, full sun.
If you want the flowers, you're going to need full sun. And I think these are bred for the foliage, the flowers, not the fruit.
Yeah.
But they are in that genus of plant that get lots of disease issues. This one, not as much as your standard peach, but air. I would think air circulation is an important cultural thing to think about with them as well.
The red, the NCSU dwarf double red, it would get every kind of peach disease known, but they keep on going while every other peach would die.
Yes,
I think they probably inherited that.
Yep.
All righty. Shira says that she planted 15 Japanese maples and all but one died.
Wow.
She wants to know what she should do.
What's her soil like?
That is, I believe, the answer to the
Pure
question.
sand?
Like if you're planting 15 Japanese maples and most of them are dying, the very first thing you should do is do a soil test to find out what it is you're working.
I would say a couple things come to mind.
Yeah.
Soil test. Time of year that you're planting, the cultural follow-up.
Yep.
They're going to need a little bit of water after you first plant them. And something that I try to tell people, when you take these things out of the pots, a lot of times there's a lot of soil piled up. We just got an order in where we literally had to take all the plants out of the pots and repot them because they were buried in the pot. And we didn't want, these are for the plant cell. We didn't want to start them off in that direction. Some of these are like that. Like this is buried a little bit too deep. So if you're taking this and planting it at that level or higher, there's going to be some problems with that. So I think it might be a combination of things. It depends on the time of the year that you planted, depends on the cultural stuff that you did afterwards. If you planted it too deep, that could be a problem. If you gave it too much water, that could be a problem. Or underwater. It's that
in the spring and it's not well established, and then we have a hot weather.
It's that happy medium when you're planting stuff, and you have to do that follow up for a year or two. Japanese maples are known to be fairly tough, but they're not immune to some of those things as well. So I would start with a soil test. I would reflect on when you planted and if you gave it enough water, and maybe planting it at a too deep of a depth where it had some problems.
Sure. And Shira's asking a follow-up question: what time of year should she plant? And like the answer to that, you
could plant anytime.
Any time of year you can plant as long as you're willing to put in the effort to water it while it's getting established.
I like Mark's answer to that. It's when you have time.
Yeah.
Ideally, the most perfect time, fall is good because things are dormant. It's a little bit cooler. They don't need as much cultural requirements. You're typically getting a little more moisture later in the fall than you are at different times of the year. We just planted a bunch of things a week or two ago because we knew we were going to get a great big rain. We knew things were going to cool down a little bit, and we had the time to do it. So we loaded up and we took a bunch of stuff out and put things in the ground. So it's all about that cultural follow-up.
Absolutely. Our dear sweet Acer palmatum Golden Falls that we planted out on our berms, we planted that in June last year.
Early June, yeah.
It was June last year, which is the worst time to plant in North Carolina.
Gorgeous.
We had interns with hoses on it at least every day.
Us too.
Yeah. So you can literally plant them at the worst time of year if you are willing to put in the effort to make sure that they can get established correctly.
June itself was dry, and then it started raining June, July, August, and September.
Right.
But
it didn't stop.
Turned off again.
Yes.
We stayed on top of the cultural stuff, the mulching, the decent soil of the berms. We ripped up the root balls. We planted at the right depth, and we didn't set sprinklers and walk away. We hand watered so that it went deep and at the right amounts. It wasn't too much. It wasn't not enough. I'm a big believer in when you first plant things is hand watering them because they're going to get more. Sprinklers a lot of times you may get shadows in areas that don't get quite enough. So I wanted to be sure that we were getting water where the water needed to go. And much to our chagrin and the perils of dragging hose all summer long.
Right.
It was kind of a rite of passage.
We did lose some things, but we found that was due to the cold weather. We had some tender plants.
Sure.
And when we pulled them out, the roots were crazy on them.
They didn't come out easy. They were rooted in very well. So we did our end of the deal.
That's awesome. Okie dokie. Patricia wants to know if we can tell her what the tree at the beginning was. Oh, the one in the background while we were waiting. So the one I announced at the beginning of this program was the Acer Bergerianum Michael Steinhardt. That's a big, beautiful trident maple. Before we got started, we were looking at the pendulous chains of racemes of Cercis flowers on our Cercis racemosa back there. And they are both wonderful plants, and they are both incredibly vibrant and beautiful at this time of year in particular.
It's been a great spring.
Really, it has.
I've been very lucky.
Michael Steinhardt has become one of my favorite Bergerians.
It's really good.
It is just a glowing yellow.
Yeah.
Seriously, yeah. And I mean, the light right now for us. Look at that thing. Just a moment of
It's
silence.
fresh all summer.
Yep.
Appreciation.
Burn.
Green.
It's very hard to find. We're trying to. We want to do some propagating ourselves.
Honestly. Well, speaking of hard to find, Paul wants to know if we have any idea where we might find Sarissa.
Sarissa?
The Sarissa japonica apple blossom we pulled off of our plant cart.
There are occasionally, you do find them at some of the nurseries. I've seen them a few around here.
Yeah.
It was on the plant cart last week. Is it?
It was on the plant cart at the end of March. There was one night in one of Bryce's classes where someone came in with this cute little bush with sweet little flowers on it, and then like everybody in the class bought one before they went home that day. So yeah, they're a sweet plant.
They're not as common, but you can find them at some
garden treasures.
Yeah. Seems like
And hey, do you want to know something else? They propagate super easy.
They're really hard to propagate. Yeah.
Tim is very sarcastic, and it's hard to tell.
Propagation workshop that the week after Memorial Day.
Honestly, yeah, we've got propagation workshop on. It's at the end of May. There's an advanced workshop where you can sign up for that. You can take cuttings off of most things in the garden, and that's.
I have probably 4 different ones I can think of. Right, 5 different ones.
Sure.
Garden. Sapporo was my favorite. It's a itty teeny tiny thing, and then this is one of the bigger growing ones, and it's white mountain, white something. And there's one out at the street, and then we have a marked wild collected one, which attracts even more pollinators than the selections. So.
Okay, we'll talk a bit about Redbuds for a moment. Jared says that he finds that he needs to prune a decent bit off of his flamethrower each spring because he's trying to build some caliper on it without the tree like outgrowing itself, falling over. He's wondering, do these other newer Redbuds have a ton of the hybrid vigor like flamethrower does?
These garden gems are compact.
Okay.
Super compact.
Yeah.
I mean, their inner nodes are tiny.
For sure. And they look...
Flamethrower, it comes from one of its parents was a weeper.
Uh-huh.
And they tend to be very vigorous and very elongated nodes. So that's part of... they've actually found... isolated a weeping form of flamethrower now. So
no kidding.
From a flamethrower. And so that's part of the reason it goes out like a flamethrower and,
sure. Okay.
And relax and grows. It's super vigorous.
Yeah. So but these garden gems with their tight little growth, they look really, really cute in a pot. Like that one's not going to outgrow itself.
You can grow those in a pot for several years, but
you can see the ace of hearts in it.
Yes. You can. I love that tree. The one out there on the gathering lawn. Its leaves look just so tidy and nice.
It's a nice plant.
For sure. Okay. Well, that is all of the questions, and it's actually exactly 4 o'clock right now.
How about that?
We timed that perfectly. Thank you so much, Greg and Tim, for pulling together all these plants and sharing a little bit about each and every one of them. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Midweek Program. We will be back next Wednesday at 3. Our director, Mark, will be talking about peonies, which those are starting to open up right now.
Yes, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff. So we'll see y'all next time. Y'all take care.